All right. Well, how do we intro? I mean, I don't know what effect you can actually put at the beginning. So,
Most people intro with like some kind of sound like we do, and then they just jump right into conversation. So like,
I actually really like the like kind of like cued it
mm-hmm.
in the past few because we didn't do it last week. But if we do that again, I think that's going to be a good theme kind of thing to do. Yeah, something like that. It's perfect.
All right. All right, folks. Welcome back to Into the Lion's Den with your hosts, Ryan Karras and Christian Griffith. Brought to you proudly by Pride Roofing and Construction.
rawr.
We need to get more sounds on that soundboard so we can kind of coin every type of thing that we're trying to accentuate.
Oh yeah,
Wah, 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 you know,
yeah.
all
But
that
we
stuff.
have that one on there.
Hit it. All right. But anyways, today we are going to talk about growth in business, and more predominantly with the conversation, what we're going to be talking about is the uncomfortable side of growth in business and how you can eliminate or alleviate at least that individual stress as the business owner by inculcating the idea of ownership of the team. Everybody in their individual departments and their individual titles taking ownership over what they're doing and buying in a little bit further in order to share the load, so to speak. So I don't know exactly how we want to spin into that, but you seem to be the king. So let's have you start.
Conversational master, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? Well, we just did a fairly large, probably the largest purchase. Is it the largest purchase outside of materials for giant jobs?
It was well, no. I mean, we spent quite a bit in consulting as
Oh
well.
yeah, that's right. That's right. But well, we just made a very large purchase.
Yeah.
And I could sense a little bit of the buyer's anxiety from Christian yesterday of the amount of money out.
Billy and Matt had to come in and let me know they knew I was stressed out by the position my hat was on my head and how much my hair was sticking up out of the hat and the tint of red on my face.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, gingers can't hide much. It's either pale or red, but gingers have souls.
if you're purple, watch out.
Yeah, purple is the bad one.
Yeah. That's a ginger's version of the Hulk.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically just a big Barney.
Yeah.
But I think that I picked up some important cues, right? And it kind of led me down a rabbit hole of some things that I've been told by some mentors before about large purchases and the stress around them and how much more it makes you feel the impact of ownership, right? Because the risk, quote unquote, or the exposure to the company is really resting on nobody else's shoulders at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, we can talk about how to position a team to have more ownership in the company. Ownership in the sense of that they operate from the mindset of being an owner or having vested interest, and how that benefits the company. But I kind of wanted to dig in with you a little bit of the jump off or the ledge of making a purchase like that. For people that are wondering, it was multiple fleet vehicles and a big giant truck, and they delivered the wrong truck, and then we had to buy a bigger truck.
Yeah.
So,
Unexpected $20,000 increase.
Yeah,
that was fun. Yeah.
kind of blindsided by it, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it's funny to me because we'll have conversations every now and then of well, just take care of that. It's a few $1,000, or that cost is nominal in the sense of what the company can bring in, which is always on a larger scheme than personal expenses, right? You know, there's I don't want to say 10x, but maybe like, you know, me spending $300, $400, $500 is something I think about, right? Whereas if it's a necessary expense for the company, it's pretty easy to spend $300, $400, $500 without really having a second thought about it. As long as you have somebody like Johnny, right?
Yeah.
Who monitors your books and makes sure that, you know, we spend money responsibly, right? And don't over leverage ourselves. But I'm just kind of curious, not so much about like the tangible purchase, right? Or like the utility of the trucks, the usefulness of the trucks. For those that are wondering, we've kind of ran our fleet ragged.
Yeah.
So all the trucks that were with the company, Christian, you guys bought individually, right?
Yeah, there's stories behind every one of them, too.
Right.
Yeah. It's
So-
it's kind of like that entrepreneurial, like I feel like every person who's started and developed and owned and operated a business for any period of time has a story to tell about everything.
Always.
Like the corner of the room has a story. You know what I mean? Every one of those fleet vehicles has a story. Before I go into the story and kind of evolution and stuff, I do want to give a shout out. John Johnson with Yoder Fleet Vehicles in Well County Garage. We appreciate you, buddy. He really hooked us up and made it. You know, he called them pennies from heaven, but he found ways to minimize costs and help us out with loyalty programs and things that we weren't essentially a perfect candidate for. He made us a perfect candidate for through whatever they do at the dealerships. His name is AJ Ayla. Joseph Mestis from U.S. Bank, business bankers. They're awesome. Move over to U.S. Bank. They're killers. They do win every year for best ethical banking business in America. I'm not really sure in the world, but America, good place to place your money if you're a business owner. And John O'Brachta as well, Captain Strategy. He doesn't get a lot of shout outs unless we're making, you know, bean counting type of jokes, but that dude is one of the pivotal pieces to making sure that we can make big expenses like that. He makes sure he keeps me in check when it comes to costs and money strategies.
I really don't think that people understand the level of chess he plays.
No, nobody else does.
Like,
yeah.
We're all playing Connect 4. We're not even playing checkers. Right?
Yeah.
We're all playing Connect 4.
Yeah, and he's over there being Billy Fisher.
And
Johnny's 12
Johnny's
professionals.
Yeah,
you know?
Johnny's playing 8 games of chess at once on a timed board.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's usually the way that he talks about things, it just blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, he's got superpowers. You know, he's learned to take his internal things. He's got ADHD, and he's turned it into a true superpower. He's found out exactly how to narrow in every piece of his brain to be, you know, 10 times faster than mine. So thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, I gave Johnny a shout out this morning because my daughter was in here yesterday, and she was like, "Dad, Johnny has the coolest shirts." And I dropped her off at school this morning, and she said, "Dad, you need to tell Johnny that I think he has the coolest shirts." So it's the first thing I said when I walked in. I was like, Kendall was adamant that I told you.
Johnny's the king of shirts and socks. Usually you can't see the socks, but his socks are dope too. But yeah, I want to give those shout outs. So if we want to go back to, I guess, how we got to where we are and why we need to take off take a leap of faith, whatever you want to call it. Actually, there's one fleet truck. It's a Ram 1500.
I was going to say it all starts with the 1500.
Starts with the 1500, and if we go back to the real origin of the organization, like I had a vehicle. I had to basically turn that truck in because when I changed career paths and started working in roofing, I did what everybody else that takes on a new profession. At least when you have to build your own pipeline as a salesperson, you basically have to narrow yourself down to nothing. You have to get rid of every expense you possibly can. Eat ramen and eggs. Your whole family has to, just kind of suffer and endure until you've built your pipeline and that kind of stuff. Right. So I had a truck. I had to turn that truck in, and actually my sister And my brother-in-law, Abby and John, you guys rock. They made a deal with me where I could purchase monthly. I could basically pay monthly for their truck without interest. I bought their vehicle from them, and it eventually evolved into the first fleet truck. Because in roofing, you can't not have a truck. Like you have to move materials, you have to do all kinds of things. You need tools, you have to be set up on site. Otherwise, you're wasting time, energy, money, whatever, and you have to rely on other people. So the truck was necessary. So thanks to those guys for making a deal with me. I would think I paid like $250 a month on no interest loan from those guys until one day we made enough money that I handed them a check, and it was a pretty cool experience to pay off the real first expense of Pride Roofing. But anyways,
What was your truck before the 59?
it was a GMC. It was a it was like it was an AT4, but it was an all-terrain. It was really nice. But that was when I was working in the gym industry, and I had figured out how to actually make some money working in the gyms and so on and so forth. But
That's a good lesson there.
yeah,
I don't want to overshoot that lesson. I think that's a good lesson. I mean, that's I'm not really one for things, right? Like Kendall asked me the other day, she's like, "Daddy, when are you going to get a new truck?" And I was like, "Why would I get a new truck?"
yeah,
Right? I was like, "I've got a Toyota Tundra that'll probably drive 400,000 miles, and it's the nicest trim model, but like." I think that's a good lesson in sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people's egos won't let them do that.
yeah. A lot of people think that they can just kind of harbor all
Yeah.
of it in and figure it out. It's not the case. You have to literally give up to whatever the life that you had before and dive 100% into this
Right.
new idea. It's like you're going to have to go through the pits to be able to figure this thing out. And if you're not willing to do that, don't don't even try getting into business. Like we always give these tips and tools, and everybody can do it. But if you're not willing to give, and sacrifice and go through some hard stuff, it's not for you, right? It's not comfy, it's not cushy, it's definitely not Gen Z style, right? It's very much a Gen X type of thing, and like mentality is you just put in the freaking work, you
Right.
know? But not to, I guess I might piss people off with like the generation conversations, whatever. Either way, it's like you get what I'm saying. These guys are hard. These guys are soft. You got to be hard. But anyways, so we got, and that's kind of how our fleet evolved as we sized up and we needed more components. We needed more labor-intensive personnel in the organization. What we would do is we'd make deals with our clients when we found out that they'd have. They had a truck that they weren't using anymore. We'd barter with them. We got 3 of our trucks off a barter system. We gave them a roof. They gave us a truck, that kind of stuff. But we ended up, like that was Jesus. He was playing some music for me.
That was a timer. It was a very different thing than
Back to it. Anyways, we had to stair step everything. Everything in evolving the business was stair stepped. And there's always been these certain moments where you realize you have no other choice but to make the big expense or make the transition. This year we knew for certain I made 2 goals at the beginning of the year. The 2 goals were we were going to evolve or more than double our commercial division. So our output in commercial division, that's repair and maintenance as well as re-roofing. We were going to more than double our volume there and perfect our processes within. And the other one was to perfect our service. And when I say perfect our service, I'm talking specifically about our residential restoration services that we provide. I wanted there to be absolutely no negative experiences for our clients. And in order to do so, if you were going to make a commitment like that, you have to do the same thing that I talked about back with the GMC all-terrain. You've got to
Right.
make some sacrifices. And one of those 2 things that we needed to do was backfill trucks. We had guys swapping trucks. We were, we had guys who would go, drop each other off in different areas, and they were freaking marooned in certain towns working on stuff while the other person's working on things, and it wasn't conducive for what we're trying to get, which
Right.
was the perfect service. And the other piece, which is the next upcoming expense, is we've sized ourselves out of our location.
Right.
If you come into the office isn't really built for, housing retail sales like you would think that a standard business building would be for. It's really for our team to have a central nucleus. But if you come in here, you see that we have people literally in desks in corners of the facility. We're like like everybody is on top of each other, but at least they've got their own little tiny
Nook.
space.
Yeah.
So the next piece is, I won't even go into that, but the next piece is finding our new location that's offsite, and then we have more building to do with that. But all of it is incredibly uncomfortable. It's like the things that you want when you first start. It's like to have the ability to get to this point where you need to expand and those types of things. But it kind of in your mind it does the same thing. It does the same things as it makes you question. It makes you question everything. It makes you stressed out. It makes you think, because we're going to talk about in this conversation like getting everybody to buy in and take ownership over their individual positions to kind of share the load of that stress. But really, I mean, if you boil it down, if this thing goes out, if something happens, right, and it blows up and everything burns up in flames, whatever, there is only one person that is going to have the repercussion, and that's me. And I feel that when we make these types of big decisions. So it was really cool to get the trucks in, but it's kind of funny. My feelings are uptight, nervous, so on and so forth. And most people are like, dude, we got new trucks. This is sick. And let's go back to work. I'm like, yeah, please go back to work. We need to do a good job to pay for these things. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my first like big ledge from the gym was I went from, I was in a similar position. We were like literally busting at the seams, right? Per fire code, right? Every hour of the day that we were operational, we were at capacity or over, right? And well, first, you don't want a fire code violation. Those are very expensive, right? But I was reluctant to find a bigger space because I looked at it like I am leveraging so much more here, right? But I'm also capping my growth, right? I literally can't grow more.
Right.
I have to turn people away. And my big ledge was I went from a 5,000 square foot space to a 23,000 square foot space.
That's a jump.
And my lease went from, I think it was like $550K a year to 1.9 million. And I was like,
yeah,
holy shit.
Close to 5X, right? Yeah.
It was like, I remember vividly to this day, the first rent check or the first rent payment that was due. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like I've never written I've never written a check to anybody at that time in my life for 5 figures. And I have to do this every month. Right.
Yeah.
It was horrifying. But, I don't know if you want to say spiritually or, energy wise, whatever it is, as soon as I took that step, it was almost like I was rewarded for taking that step, right? It was like, okay, now I know that you're willing to risk, which means that you have some trust. So now I'm really going to fill it up.
Right.
Right. And I went from 220 people to like 480 in a year. And, but it was horrifying. I mean, I'm at the time I'm 26 years old, writing, and nobody else that worked for me felt that, right? They just want to get paid on time, and they want to do their job, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll pay you on time, you can do your job, but what you don't understand is that I am frantic in my head right now because I have to pay $14,782 a month in rent.
Which is called business owners' ducks.
Right.
On the surface of the water, they call them, but they're little feet.
Your feet are never stop. Yeah. So I'm curious with the sense of anxiety or fear that you kind of have is my thought when you said to me yesterday, you were like, I need you to go sell stuff. Right. I was like, I mean, I'll sell stuff. That's what I do. Right. I do it all day long. Right. But, the first thought in my head was like, I'm wondering if he's struggling with an abundance mindset right now, right? Where it's like, granted, this was 20 minutes, 30 minutes after you had to spend an extra $20K.
It was about 30 seconds
Yeah.
before I made the decision we were going to.
Right. So, but like I look at it like even the simple utility of these trucks, how many more doors does that open? Right? And how much more freedom does that give us to execute certain things, right? Which then in turn always equals more revenue, right?
Well, I mentioned this in other videos. I was really appreciative of when we first started. I had a business partner, right? I was really appreciative of the dichotomy of our leadership and our personalities, because it was really easy for him to make incredibly risky decisions,
Right.
and it was really hard for me to make those decisions. So we met somewhere in the middle, and always kept it kind of. I always fade towards the. It's not that I don't believe in the abundance mindset. It's that I have an incessant, there are things on repeat inside of my head all the time that say, this is what is now expected. This is what is now expected. This is what is now
Right.
expected, right? And so it's not that I don't understand how valuable it is to expand. It's that occasionally it takes me a little while to get comfortable in my skin with the decisions. You know what I mean?
Which is good. I think that the being too impulsive with risk definitely has its problems, right?
Well, and since taking over 100%, as the captain at the helm, whatever you want to call it, about 2.5 years of it now, or maybe a little bit less than that, but I've had to essentially just ignore the risk averse side of myself, and it's always paid dividends. That's the point. So like when you said that there's like a spiritual aspect of it, where it's like okay, you've taken the proverbial jump. Now you're going to be supported. We'll make sure of that.
Right.
It's always been. Right, and I can believe in that. It's like, when we make these decisions, because that's the thing about growth. Growth is uncomfortable. It's what you want at the beginning, but when you get there, all of a sudden it becomes uncomfortable again. Because, I mean, I've made this joke about 100 times with other people. Because there's guys that they're incredibly talented guys, but they don't necessarily want to start their own thing, but they're flirting with the idea of starting their own thing. I'll usually make the joke of just expect to have another bill every week for the rest of your life, and they don't go away. They just keep adding.
An unexpected bill, yeah.
Right, and I don't think. I mean, 5.5 years later, there hasn't been something else that became an annual expense week by week by week by week by week.
Right.
Right. So, but anyways, it's like I can't even remember why I jumped into that. I just lost my train of thought.
Well, you were touching on the spiritual aspect of taking those risks, trusting.
Yeah. So as you get to the points that you've always wanted to be at, and you kind of have to reaffirm yourself. You're like, this is what I wanted. This is where I wanted to go, right? And if you start to believe what you believed at the beginning, and you realize and think back on every one of those milestones that you've just obliterated along the way, you're like, why in the hell couldn't I just obliterate more milestones? Right, then it changes and things start moving. So the addition of the fleet means that we will perfect our service, and when we perfect our service, that means we will get word of mouth. It means we will get referral and repeat service. We will be able to double, triple, quadruple our revenue. The addition of the box truck will allow us to open up an entirely new income stream that we haven't been fully bought into.
Right.
We'll be able to market and produce incredible gutter work that we weren't able to do before. We've been able to service gutters. We haven't been able to just completely sell it as its own product in the past. So it's like, I know that the script that we're operating off of is going to be a successful one, but it doesn't mean that there's not some ants in my skin as we make those decisions.
Do you pray about it?
I always pray about it. Every time we make decisions like this, it's got to be. My mom told me this when I was a kid, and she said that God doesn't. You don't hear His voice. Some people claim to hear His voice, but she said in my lifetime, I've never heard the voice. But what I have heard is not hearing. It's not audible. It's feeling. When you feel peace about something, after praying, then it's the right thing. And so as we approach these different, okay, we could go this way and we could stay reserved and we can dial things down, or we could go this way and do exactly what we want to do and expand. Okay, tell me what I should do. This is, so on and so forth. And if you feel peace, go that direction. But it's that's been really powerful for me in my growth as an entrepreneur, growth in general, is staying grounded to the principles. And that's another layer. I'm glad you brought that up. That's another layer altogether. What I firmly believe is that, I know that we normally don't go super spiritual on these conversations, so hopefully people don't tune out, but this is important to me. I firmly believe that God gives the ability for some people to be successful in business. And there are some people that get there regardless of the spiritual backing. They might be atheists. They might not have any type of backing, and they get successful. But what they do with that success is much different than somebody who's been blessed in their endeavor. Right. My intention is to give as much as I can to every person that I possibly can, meaning like every person that walks through the doors, I want them to leave better than when they came. That's employees, my time with clients, the amount that we can give back. The go-giver and the stratospheric laws of success are, they're literally intertwined into the roots of the organization. And that's the purpose of this podcast in general, is like giving trade secrets, giving that you can do it, that pat on the back, like we got you type of thing. That's for the listeners. Like, we want to give. Right. And as long as we stay focused on that, I'm very confident that every decision that we make, regardless of how comfortable it is, or on how long it'll be uncomfortable, is going to pay its dividends, because we are grounded on the right things and we're trying to focus on the right things. We want to do it right and we want to help.
Right.
So
I'm curious of I'm just going to go further into the spiritual thing because I think it's important. I just don't think, I think that whether you're agnostic, atheist, any religion, it doesn't matter. I think that we all have a guiding compass, more or less, right? Hopefully, at least. But what's your opinion on like your conscience and its relation to God?
maybe go a little deeper. I'm confused by that.
So there's a belief, right, that your conscience, when you're making a decision, right, or you have that gut feeling of like, this is not right, or maybe I should make a different decision, or this decision or this circumstance is making me feel yucky, right? That there is a belief that that's a higher being present in you, that possesses a level of intelligence that you can't possess in the moment, right? I'm just referencing the fact that, like you said, like your mom said, it's not necessarily that you hear God, right? It's more of a feeling. I guess for me, some of the things that I've experienced with like my conscience is in the moment of something that makes me feel uncomfortable with whatever. Usually the thoughts that I have in my conscience are very, very elevated or very far removed from who I am in my conscious mind, right? And it never steers me wrong.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think, that's really like you have a conversation with an atheist and you have the conversation about morality. It's like, is there a true good and a true evil? Would you agree that murdering somebody is evil? Like, yeah. Okay. Where does that come from? Where does that feeling that this is wrong come from?
Right.
Is it innate inside you? Do you think it was pre-built inside of you?
Right.
And then we start having a conversation about creation, right? Right. So I agree wholeheartedly that your conscience is is innate and is created and placed inside of you, I think that it evolves as well, depending on how much exercise you give to your spiritual life.
Totally.
For me, I always have that feeling. I know when something's right and when something's wrong. I have like predisposed, emotional tendencies in certain things where I know what's right and I choose to do what's wrong because of how uncomfortable I'm going to get.
Right.
I mean, we talked about sobriety a couple episodes ago. I knew what I was doing was wrong.
Right.
I knew it. I
Right.
knew it every single time, and I chose to ignore it.
Right.
Right. And so I would say at 100%, your conscience is 100% spiritually derived. I think it can grow. To me, it's more of, because I'm a Christian, I believe that it's the Holy Spirit is speaking inside of
Right.
you, right? Which is an elevated, it's metaphysical. It's not of this world, right? Which is why it's so clear in the midst of the clouds, right? And so I believe in that. And my pastor says it the best, Pastor Rick up in Wellington, River Life. If he ever watches these shows, I might irritate him with the cuss words I push
Shout
out.
out,
Rick. But he says that essentially, there's a process inside your body. So what you absorb through your eyes and your ears, reading the Bible or hearing the Word, or being in the midst of people who are operating by the right standards of life, or vice versa, the wrong standards of life, what enters your eyes and enters your ears, it works their way into your heart, and it becomes part of who you are. And then that's how you start to make your decisions, right? Your heart leads your mind to your decisions, right? And so, yeah, I think that, and so not even just focusing on the spiritual portion of things. I mean, that's the reason that like the law of attraction and things like that are out there. It's like, if you manifest, the way they talk about it is manifestation. Now, I don't necessarily think that you can manifest everything. I think that you can become so focused on something that you will find the opportunity. I get that. But the reason it's so powerful for people is because that is what they put in.
Right.
That's what they then believe, and that's how their output and their decisions then start being, right? They understand that they need to find the door to opportunity, and that's the only thing they're thinking about because that's what's inside of them now.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, the law of attraction thing makes me kind of giggle because it's like, we'll say they make a vision board, right? And they're like, these are the things that I want to attract. What they don't realize is that if they're genuinely putting their effort towards those things, their behavior changes.
Right.
Right. So it's really just like
it's not that it just pops up out of nowhere. That's the thing that most people are like, manifest it. Like, it doesn't just pop up.
Right.
What happens is you make micro changes inside of yourself because this is what you want so bad that's all you are going to focus on.
Yeah. So let's kind of go into the principle of implanting the sense of ownership on the employee front, right? So like, it's easy for me because I've owned businesses, right? So that's kind of just how my brain works in general. But let's say for somebody that, we could use an example of, we'll say Joe, right? Who's never owned a business, but we want him to come from the perspective of, I want you to take what you're doing so seriously and care so much as if you owned the business and this was yours, right? So like, what are and I have my own thoughts on this, but what are your ideas, or how do you do that if you feel like you're doing it now? What are those ideas that you have, or how would you want to encourage somebody to operate that way?
That's a good question. So I can tell you ways that you will derail yourself. I think that's a good place to start. Adding pressure because you're stressed is a really terrible way to do it, right? So like
Adding pressure to those around you.
Correct. So like when I came out and said, you need to go south, it was more of a joke because you know what I'm getting to.
I know exactly.
But I would have never said that to an introductory salesperson.
Right.
Like that is the answer. It's like, it's funny. We have this John and I have like this, like we've told it to everybody, but every time we have a conversation, the result of the conversation when we're trying to get through something is we need more sales. That's the answer to literally everything.
But I mean, transparently, that's the answer to every profitable business. That's not a 501c3.
Right. It's so that's, but that is the answer.
Well, and
if you
even-
guys can go out and sell some more, I won't have the stress that I have right now.
And
But-
even a 501c3, their intention is we need more donations.
Right.
Right.
So without adding pressure, because that's going to create an incredible problem, right? Because then people they put stress on themselves, but they don't have a foundation to support the stress, like the principal ideals. It's like some people will take on stress when they believe in something. Right. You believe that the thing you want the most in your life is to become a professional bodybuilder, and you believe that wholeheartedly, then you're going to take on the stress of that discipline and the weight and the time and the weighing of the scales of your food and all that stuff. You're going to take that on, right? But if you don't believe wholeheartedly that's what you want to do, or that's what you need to do, it'll be fickle.
Yeah.
It'll last a month or two.
Right.
You'll want to go out and party, fall off the rails, may come back once, do it all over again, rinse and repeat.
Not
right?
weigh your chicken anymore.
Right, exactly. So what we have to do, in my opinion, to answer this question is instill beliefs, right? And a belief that also involves their growth, right? So for somebody like Joe, what we need to do without dangling carrots, because I don't believe in dangling carrots, saying this is what you're going to get when you do these things,
Right.
It's like here are the many ways that you can succeed and you can flourish while you're here, but it's up to you to get there. Right. But it's having him understand that we can develop a team around him, and he's going to be the person that is the driving force to that. Right. Because he's in charge of canvassing, lead acquisition specialist, whatever little bow you want to tie onto it. They knock doors, they find lead opportunities, and they send them back to the organization, and we pay for it. Right. But he's an individual man out there, but an individual man is not nearly as lethal as an army. Right. You have an army of door knockers, and you're their leader. And if he wants to be a leader, you've just instilled an idea of I can become this leader. Right. So when your vision is paralleled to their vision, I think that we can actually instill that ownership perspective.
Most on your point of the dangling carrots thing, which was previously done a lot, not by you, but by somebody else. It's a very fleeting form of motivation, right? It's and usually because the carrot you're dangling is usually financial in some aspect, right? Whether it's a gift or a trip or money.
Or a title change.
People
want control or authority or whatever. Yeah.
But it's a very short-term motivator, right? Like most frequently days at most. Right.
Well, it's not just that it's short term, it's that it is immediately introducing a friction opportunity.
Right.
Immediately. Because what happens when they do cross the milestones you set for them, and no longer is that an opportunity because we've changed
something,
the vision.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So what's the tricky part is there's ownership on so many levels, right? So like, let's say all the production guys that are driving these new trucks, right? We want to embark and teach them ownership of treat this like it's your own, right? Keep it clean, keep the maintenance up, right? Don't drive like an idiot, right? I don't want to get a phone call that you cut somebody off, because we've gotten those before.
Yeah.
All the way to, the business side of things is like, I want to squeeze every dollar that I possibly can out of each one of these vehicles, right? So how do we, implant that sense of, which is difficult, especially in some of like the laborers we have that have been laborers for decades, and they're okay with being, I don't want to say a cog in the wheel, but they're okay being where they are. They have no interest in advancing, right? And they want to do their job, go home on repeat, right?
Well, that type of person, that personality, I mean, it has its place. It fits in. But you can still drive the right behavior.
Totally.
It's like, do you want to maintain this level of comfort?
Right.
You are comfortable, correct?
Right.
You have a nice, cushy truck. You have a nice, cushy job. You've got the salary. Do you want to maintain that?
Right.
I mean, inherently, because you knew that already, yes, they do.
Right.
Here's how we do it. I'm expecting X, Y, and Z. I mean, that's a pretty easy way to kind of continue to have the best you can out of somebody who's not trying to follow or, not trying to paint a new canvas.
Right. So what do you feel you can do or need to do to be more present in the opportunity or abundance mindset? Or was that anxiety, that fear-driven anxiety, fleeting? Like, was it, did it last a few hours and then you're like, oh, okay, well, this was already planned, so not a big deal?
There's still a couple of things that I'm just not excited about, which are simple, because there's a multitude of different payments that have to go out and stuff. I'm just not that excited about the payments. But outside of that, as soon as it was over and the decision was made and I kind of breathed and allowed myself the time to understand that this is what we want and this is how we're going to get to level X, whatever that level is that we're at now, I'm already past it.
Yep.
I'm already past it. And I hope that viewers, especially the ones that are like, they're in the beginning phases of entrepreneurialism or starting a business or whatever. I don't want it to seem like there's all these like terrifying things that are going to come up, and you got to be, you need to be Lionheart, like you're the guy that's slaying dragons out there. It's not like that. It's just I want people to understand that if you believe in yourself and you find your why. We had that conversation a long time ago. It's not what you're producing in your business, and it's not how you're producing it. It's why you are doing it. If you keep that inside yourself and you make your decisions based off the why factor, there's going to be a bunch of bumps and whatever, but the best stories are the ones that had all kinds of dragons to slay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's not to derail people. It's just to kind of promote the ideas that are going to keep it healthy.
Right.
Right. It can be something that drives people insane. There are certain people that there's a reason that like 9 out of 10 businesses are not in business any longer at the point of, and that's across any industry at the point of 10 years. Right. And that's because it's not just that they couldn't figure out a way to be successful. It's because they just didn't have enough of that intestinal fortitude. That was driven specifically because they were grounded in their why factor, and they just eventually said, "This is too much stress."
Yep.
Right? They chose or chosen. I don't know if I used the right word there, but they chose to leave.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just that they failed; it's that they chose to leave. There's a lot of that happens too. So, stay firmly grounded in that, and the abundance versus scarcity mindset is a conversation that everybody have. You have to realize there are 7+ billion people in the world, and like for me, it's really easy. It's like everybody, not everybody. There are homeless people. There are, tribes of people who've never actually lived inside a house in the Amazon. I'm not working there, so it's kind of irrelevant. But it's like everybody needs the service. Everybody needs the service. They want a roof over their head. They want the exoskeleton. It's really easy for me to stay grounded on that because it's like, it's always there. I just have to knock one more door. I just have to send one more advertisement. I just have to, fill in the blank. I just got to continue doing it, put in those repetitions, and we're going to be just fine.
Right. So I think I look at like how comparable this is to the fleet of trucks we had to now is a big step. I think about like, what in 3 to 5 years, how laughable this will be when we go buy 12 trucks.
Right.
or 15 trucks.
Yeah, and I'm not nervous whatsoever.
Right.
It's like, stroke a check, baby.
Yeah, still get them, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, every year, it's kind of funny. I've said this a lot of times, but every year that the business has been in, been in business, the business has been in business, whatever. Every year, there's always been just a new feeling about what you're going to achieve that year. Like what obstacles are in our way, they're always different. You know, it's like the state, new level, new devil.
Yep.
There's always something new, and it's this one's kind of fun. This one's kind of fun, where it's like, okay, we finally made it to a point where we feel like we can aggressively expand in certain areas. So thank you to everybody who said yes to us, right? Family members and employees that supported over time. It's like, thank you for getting us here. But if you look at where we are 5.5 years later, and we just add another 5.5 years, it's like, that's going to be crazy.
The law of compounding effect.
You know, eating ramen and eggs and,
Using bundles of shingles as your desk.
yeah, it's like that. That's where we were 5.5 years ago. And now we're buying, 8 figures worth, or not 8 figures. That's a lot of figures.
We
lot of
bought
numbers worth of trucks.
We bought a fleet of Lamborghinis.
Yeah, no, that's not. We didn't use your money for that, guys. Whoever bought. But anyways, that number, that just seemed so unrealistic and so far fetched 5.5 years ago. And what is it that going to be compounded?
Right.
That's the thing to keep in mind too. Yeah.
So to close it off, I'm just curious, what's your favorite or most gratifying milestone thus far?
Gratifying milestone. Honestly, I think that towards the end of last year, right around, I'd say the middle of Q4, when we started to, because generally in the roofing and construction world, if you're outside, right, just outside construction, things get really hard in the wintertime because it's like you can still contract your work, but you're setting it up on a schedule for the springtime, and somehow you have to figure out how to make sure all your bills are paid in that. We call it burn season, right? When we did the financials and realized that burn season wasn't going to take me dumping my personal savings back in to pay my team members. That was a good one.
I think that, because what was it, 3 years prior to that? I mean, there was a pretty shitty conversation had in the back room with, I think it was me, you, Chris, crew, and John. And it was like burn season.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like, damn. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of growth for 24 months.
It's a lot of growth. I feel very blessed. Absolutely.
I think that I thought that you were going to say last week. Right?
Which part of last week?
Last week, it seemed like in here, everybody worked in synchronicity. Everybody worked symbiotically.
Yeah.
Everybody, there was a very, very high sense of teamwork. I mean, when you mix 30 people's personalities with egos and their personal lives, whatever goes on outside of here.
And some layers of varying amounts of control.
Yeah.
You know.
It's really difficult to have a week where everybody literally seems to be on the same page, firing at all cylinders, crushing.
Yeah, that was a good week. I'm glad you reminded me of that. Yeah, I mean, the winter time is, excuse me, I got the hiccups for some reason. The winter time is always a scary thing. So I have some PSD, Pooter School District. I got some PTSD, I guess is the right term for the wintertime, for burn season.
Yep.
So that was a big deal. But yeah, last week was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was like I didn't have to beg people to show up and work together.
Right.
For like the first time ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that week were to repeat itself, even for half of the year,
Right.
I would feel comfortable with my ultimate goal,
Your fishing trip.
my fishing trip. Right? I would feel comfortable. I could leave for 2 weeks unannounced, unplug, and come back, and I feel like we would be better than when I left.
I think you could do that now, personally. But,
It's a challenge. All right.
I mean, it's. I also take a pretty large sense of pride in like, I'm gonna fucking prove it to you, right? So like,
Well, that's that ownership. That's what
Right.
we got to get everybody to do.
right. So, but yeah, that's. Last week was from from the few of us that are on the E team, as you call it, right? We're kind of on the outskirts in a lot. But last week was very rewarding for me as well. I mean, just seeing team members interacting with team members being extremely helpful, everybody being productive without having to be reminded to be productive. And, I think it's every person that was involved in sales had a contract. Everybody.
Did they really?
Every single
Because I think that was I'm kind of pissed that I missed that because I've been
Every
waiting
single
for
person.
years, for
including
that to happen.
Tara.
Yeah, I've been waiting for years for that to happen.
Yeah.
I need to make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Basketball.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's from the processes after that involve kind of like the front end of the business and the back end of the business, right? Everybody meshed very well.
No
Right.
individual silos. That's been obviously it's been a pain point for me for a while. So yeah. Well,
So-
maybe one of these days I'll take you up on that, and I'll let you prove it. Yeah, I just have that same trouble that everybody else has, is letting go of the wheel. I've let go of a lot of the wheels,
Yeah.
but there are some of them I'm just like white knuckled on, like
Oh yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
But
That
I mean,
that's extremely normal.
yeah, I mean that's the plight of the. I mean, it started out of an idea in my head, and now we're here. So I mean, it's kind of hard to just let everybody run the idea inside my head without me saying something about it. That's a big step. I'll get there. That's the goal. I mean, that's everybody's goal, is to not work in your business, but on your business.
Yep.
And I feel like we're getting to a point there, and
Yeah.
that's part of the comfortability with buying the trucks and also getting into that new location and stuff. It's like I feel like we really truly can do what I've wanted to do this whole time, which
Right.
is build a perfect model,
Right.
and have it be so set in stone that it's just unbreakable.
Perfectly scalable model.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, sweet. I think that's a good wrap up for us. Yeah.
Yep, that was a good one. Well, thanks for getting me some good cues to bring out a little bit more emotion, some cooler stories. There are a lot of stories. I'll issue those, or I'll send those out. If anybody, I'll always send this at the end of these conversations. If anybody's watching these videos and they'd really like to get on here, I think it's going to be pretty soon that we should start interviewing some local business owners, some coaches, some leaders, and whatever your own right is. If you have some cool stories, we'd love to hear it, because that's really where I get my rocks off on, is learning people's path to their success story.
I wanted to. I think that I would really like to get some outside guests in here as well, right? So I think that I'm going to start making some reach outs, but if you would like to come talk about your business in the sense of just getting yourself out there, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you on. Pick your brain. Maybe I'll draw some emotion out of you. And yeah.
Might leak a bit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, please like and subscribe, engage in the content.
Share it.
Definitely share it. That's the most valuable tool.
Yep.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yep.
Catch you on the flip side.
Later.
Wow.